What do you do when the people who control your neighborhood think they can squeeze you dry, but you hold the keys to every house on the block? I stood on my front porch, staring at the letter from the HOA, my blood simmering. Excess vehicle violation, it read, demanding a $500 fine for the 3 cars parked in my driveway. 3 cars. My wife's sedan, my pickup, and my son's beat-up hatchback. Apparently, that was one too many for the pristine image of Willow Creek Estates. The audacity hit me like a slap. I crumpled the paper, my knuckles whitening. They didn't know who they were dealing with. My name is Marcus Reed, and I don't just live in Willow Creek. I own it. Every single house, every manicured lawn, every mailbox, every brick. All 42 homes. And I wasn't about to let Karen Whitaker, the HOA president with a clipboard and a vendetta, push me around. It started innocently enough. 5 years ago, I moved into Willow Creek with my wife, Lena, and our teenage son, Ethan. The neighborhood was a postcard. Quiet streets, cookie-cutter houses, and neighbors who waved but kept their distance. I liked it that way. I'd made my fortune in real estate, buying low, selling high, and when the developer of Willow Creek went bankrupt, I saw an opportunity. I bought the entire block at a steal, every house, every lot. I didn't tell anyone. Why would I? I rented out the homes, kept the lawns trimmed, and played the part of just another homeowner. To the neighbors, I was Marcus, the guy who fixed cars in his garage and grilled burgers on Sundays. To the HOA, I was a nobody. Until now. The letter wasn't the first jab from Karen. She'd been eyeing me for months, ever since I parked my pickup on the street during a garage cleanout. It's an eyesore, she'd said. Her lips pursed like she'd bitten a lemon. I moved the truck, not because I cared, but because I didn't want the hassle. But this was war. Karen thought she could find me for living my life, for parking my cars in my own driveway. She didn't know I could turn her precious HOA upside down with a single phone call. I tossed the letter onto the kitchen counter, where Lena was chopping vegetables for dinner. "They're at it again," I said, my voice tight. She glanced at the paper, her eyes narrowing. "What's her problem now?" she asked. Ethan, sprawled on the couch with his phone, snorted. "She's got nothing better to do than count cars." He wasn't wrong. I stepped outside, the evening air cool against my skin. Across the street, Karen's house glowed with perfect symmetry. Her roses clipped to military precision, her driveway empty except for her gleaming SUV. She was the queen of Willow Creek, or so she thought. Her HOA meetings were legendary. 2 hours of complaints about untrimmed hedges, kids on skateboards, and suspicious delivery vans. I'd attended one just to see what I was dealing with. Karen ran it like a courtroom, her gavel a manicured finger jabbing at her rulebook. "We have standards," she'd said, her eyes locking on me when someone mentioned my truck. Standards? What a joke. Her standards were about control, not community. I decided to pay her a visit, not as the shadow owner of Willow Creek, but as Marcus Reed, the guy with too many cars. I crossed the street, the crumpled letter in my hand, and knocked on her door. She answered quickly, her blonde bob immaculate, her smile as fake as the plastic flamingos in her neighbor's yard. "Marcus," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "What can I do for you?" I held up the letter. It's nonsense." Her smile didn't waver. "Rules are rules, Marcus. 3 cars in the driveway violate Section 4.2 of the covenants. I'm sure you understand." I didn't understand. I didn't want to. "It's my property," I said, my voice low. "I'll park what I want." Her eyes narrowed, just a flicker before the smile returned. "Then you'll pay the fine. Or we'll escalate." Escalate. The word hung between us like a dare. I went home, my mind racing. Karen didn't know it, but she'd just lit a fuse. I wasn't going to pay her fine. I wasn't going to bend. I'd built my life on outsmarting people like her, people who thought they held all the cards. But I had an ace she couldn't imagine. I owned every house in Willow Creek. Every tenant paid me rent. Every lease was in my name. If I wanted, I could rewrite the rules of this neighborhood overnight. But I didn't want to play that card yet. Not when I could make her think she was winning. I called a meeting with my lawyer, Sarah, the next morning. "I want options," I told her. She grinned, already smelling blood. You've got more than options, Marcus. You got the whole game. The plan was simple. Hit back without revealing my hand. Sarah drafted a letter, polite but sharp, citing legal precedents about property rights and HOA overreach. I sent it to Karen, certified mail, and waited. 2 days later, she responded with a new letter, doubling down. The fine was now $750, and she'd scheduled an HOA hearing to address my noncompliance. I laughed when I read it. She was digging her own grave, and I was happy to hand her the shovel. I told Lena and Ethan over dinner. She's got no idea, Ethan said, grinning. Lena wasn't so sure. Be careful, Marcus. She's not just petty. She's vicious. I nodded, but I wasn't worried. Not yet. The hearing was set for the following week at the community center. I spent the days leading up to it preparing, not just with Sarah, but with my tenants. I didn't tell them I owned their homes. Not yet, but I dropped hints, casual comments about knowing the right people or having leverage. Most of them hated the HOA as much as I did. Karen's rules had hit them hard too. Fines for kids' toys left in yards, warnings about unapproved paint colors. I didn't need to convince them to show up. They were ready to fight. The night before the hearing, I walked through Willow Creek, looking at the houses I'd bought. Each one was a piece of my empire, a secret I'd kept for years. Karen thought she was in charge, but she was about to learn the truth. The hard way. The community center was a sterile box of a building, with fluorescent lights and folding chairs arranged like a courtroom. I walked in, Sarah at my side, and felt the eyes of Willow Creek's residents on me. Karen sat at the front, flanked by her HOA board, 3 retirees who nodded at her every word. The room buzzed with tension, neighbors whispering, some glaring at me, others at Karen. I spotted a few of my tenants in the crowd, their faces tight with anticipation. They didn't know I owned their homes, but they knew I was taking a stand. I sat in the front row, my hands steady, the crumpled HOA letter still in my pocket like a talisman. Karen opened the hearing with her usual flair, her voice crisp and commanding. We're here to address a violation of Willow Creek's covenants by Marcus Reed, she said, holding up a photo of my driveway, my 3 cars circled in red like a crime scene. The crowd murmured. She went on, listing the rules, the fines, the importance of maintaining property values. I let her talk, my face blank. Sarah leaned over and whispered, she's performing. Let her. I nodded. Karen was building her case, but she was also building her own trap. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, my voice calm but firm. I'm not paying the fine, I said. My cars are on my property. You don't get to dictate how I use it. The room went quiet. Karen's smile faltered, just for a second. Mr. Reed, she said, the covenants are clear. You signed them when you moved in. I didn't flinch, and I'm saying they're overreach. I've got a lawyer who agrees. I gestured to Sarah, who stood and handed out copies of her letter, citing case law and property rights. The crowd shifted, some nodding, others frowning. Karen's face tightened, but she recovered quickly. We'll review your claims, she said, but the fine stands until then. That's when the twist came. Not from me, but from Mrs. Delaney, a tenant in one of my houses. She was a quiet woman, in her 60s, always tending her garden. I hadn't expected her to speak, but she stood, her voice trembling with anger. Karen, you fined me last month for my grandson's bike in the yard. You said it was clutter. He's 6. He's not a criminal. The room erupted in murmurs. Another tenant, Javier, stood next. You fined me for my work van. I'm a plumber. It's how I pay my rent. One by one, others joined in, their voices rising, a chorus of frustration. Karen's composure cracked, her hands gripping her clipboard like a shield. I hadn't planned this, but I leaned into it. Sounds like I'm not the only one fed up, I said, my voice carrying. The crowd roared. Karen banged her gavel, a cheap wooden thing that sounded hollow. Order, she shouted, but the room was hers no longer. I sat back, letting the chaos unfold. Sarah whispered, this is better than we planned. I nodded, but my eyes stayed on Karen. She was rattled, but not broken. Not yet. The hearing ended in a stalemate. Karen refused to drop the fine, but the crowd's anger hung in the air like smoke. As we left, I caught her staring at me, her eyes cold with calculation. She wasn't done. Neither was I. The next morning, I found a new letter taped to my door. Not mailed, not delivered, taped like a taunt. It was a notice of a special HOA meeting to address ongoing violations. My name was at the top, but so were others, Mrs. Delaney, Javier, even the Wilsons, who'd been fined for a basketball hoop. Karen was doubling down, targeting anyone who'd spoken out. I called Sarah. She's escalating, I said. Good, Sarah replied. Let her overplay her hand. I spent the day talking to tenants, quietly rallying them. I still didn't reveal I owned their homes. That card was for later, but I listened to their stories, their anger. They were ready to push back. By the time the special meeting rolled around, Willow Creek was a powder keg. The community center was packed, standing room only. Karen stood at the front, her smile gone, replaced by a grim determination. She started with a speech about community standards and protecting our investment. Then she pointed at me. Mr. Reed's defiance sets a dangerous precedent, she said. If we let him ignore the rules, what's next? I stood, ready to fire back, but Javier beat me to it. What's next is you stop treating us like criminals, he shouted. The crowd cheered. Mrs. Delaney stood again, her voice stronger now. You're not protecting us. You're bullying us. Karen's face went red, her control slipping. I seized the moment. Karen, you talk about standards, but this isn't about standards. It's about power. You think you can fine us, control us, because you run the HOA. But you're not untouchable. Her eyes narrowed. Is that a threat, Mr. Reed? She asked. I smiled. It's a fact. The room buzzed, the tension electric. I could have dropped the bomb then, told her I owned every house, every inch of Willow Creek. But I didn't. I wanted her to keep digging, to think she had the upper hand. As the meeting ended, Karen announced a vote to increase fines across the board. It passed, barely, thanks to her loyalists. But the crowd was furious, and I knew I had them. That night, I sat with Lena and Ethan, mapping out the next move. She's desperate, Lena said. She's alienating everyone. Ethan grinned. Time to bring the hammer down, Dad. I nodded, but I wasn't ready to reveal my secret yet. I wanted Karen to feel the pressure, to make one final mistake. And she did the very next day. A new letter arrived, this one threatening legal action against me for defamation and inciting unrest. I laughed out loud. She'd just given me the opening I needed. The letter was a declaration of war. Karen wasn't just coming for me. She was coming for everyone who dared to speak out. Defamation? Inciting unrest? It was absurd, but it was also her fatal mistake. I called Sarah immediately. She's suing me, I said, handing her the letter. Sarah's eyes lit up. This is gold, Marcus. She's got nothing, and she's just exposed herself. We spent the morning dissecting the letter, drafting a response that didn't just defend me, but turn the tables. Sarah suggested a countersuit, not just for me, but for the tenants who'd been harassed. We can bury her in legal fees, she said. I liked the sound of that, but I had something bigger in mind. I decided it was time to start pulling strings. I called a meeting with my tenants, not as their landlord, but as their neighbor. I invited them to my house, kept it casual, pizza, soda, a backyard gathering. About 20 showed up, including Mrs. Delaney and Javier. I let them vent first, listening as they shared stories of Karen's petty fines and threats. Then I steered the conversation. We can fight back, I said, not just at HOA meetings, but in court. Together. They nodded, their anger turning to resolve. I didn't tell them I owned their homes. Not yet. I wanted their trust, not their awe. The twist came when Mrs. Delaney pulled me aside after the meeting. Her hand shook as she handed me a folder. I found this in my attic, she said. It was in a box from the previous owner. Inside were documents from the original developer detailing the HOA's formation. One page stood out, a clause buried in the fine print, stating that the HOA could be dissolved if the majority landowner requested it. My heart raced. I was the majority landowner. I owned every house. This was the key to ending Karen's reign without revealing my full hand. I thanked Mrs. Delaney. promising to look into it. She didn't know what she'd just given me, but it was a game changer. The next HOA meeting was a battlefield. Karen had rallied her loyalists, a small but vocal group who clung to her vision of standards. She stood at the podium, her voice sharp as she announced new fines, new rules, and a plan to hire a lawyer to protect the community. I stood, my folder from Mrs. Delaney tucked under my arm. "Before you waste more money," I said, "let's talk about the covenants." I read the clause aloud, slow and deliberate, watching Karen's face pale. The room went silent. "As the majority landowner," I said, pausing for effect, "I have the right to dissolve this HOA." The crowd gasped. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she had no words. I didn't reveal I owned every house. Not yet. I let the threat hang. Let her imagination run wild. "Who's the majority landowner?" she demanded, her voice shaking. I smiled. "You'll find out soon enough." The meeting dissolved into chaos. Neighbors shouting, some cheering, others demanding answers. Karen stormed out, her clipboard abandoned. I went home, adrenaline pumping. Lena was waiting, her eyes wide. "You didn't tell them?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not yet. Let her sweat." Ethan, listening from the couch, laughed. "She's done, Dad. She just doesn't know it." The next day, Karen came to my house. No letter, no clipboard, just her, standing on my porch, her face a mix of anger and fear. "What are you playing at, Marcus?" she asked. "Who's behind this?" I leaned against the doorframe, casual. "You've been running this place like a dictator, Karen. It's over." She flinched, but her eyes hardened. "You think you can scare me? I've got lawyers. I'll fight this." I shrugged. "Go ahead. You'll lose." She turned and left, her heels clicking on the pavement. I watched her go, knowing she was scrambling, calling her board, her lawyer, anyone who'd listen. But she was out of moves. I spent the next few days preparing with Sarah. We drafted a formal request to dissolve the HOA, citing the clause Mrs. Delaney had found. I didn't need to reveal my ownership yet. The clause only required a majority landowner, not a public declaration. But I knew the truth would come out soon. I wanted it to hit at the right moment, when Karen was at her weakest. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was buzzing. Tenants started ignoring HOA notices, parking their cars wherever they wanted, leaving toys in their yards. Karen tried to enforce her rules, sending out more fines, but no one paid. Her authority was crumbling, and she knew it. The final showdown was set for the next HOA meeting, a special session called by Karen to restore order. I knew it was her last stand. I prepared carefully, meeting with tenants, sharing the plan without spilling my secret. They didn't need to know I owned their homes. They just needed to know we could win. Sarah and I filed the dissolution request that morning, sending it to Karen and the board. It was a legal bombshell, and I knew it would hit hard. As I walked to the community center that evening, I felt the weight of what was coming. Not just a fight with Karen, but a reckoning for Willow Creek. I was ready. The community center was a pressure cooker, the air thick with anticipation. Every chair was filled, neighbors standing along the walls, their faces a mix of hope and defiance. Karen stood at the front, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the crowd like a general facing mutiny. Her board sat behind her, their expressions uneasy. I took my seat in the front row, Sarah beside me, the dissolution request in a folder on my lap. The room buzzed as Karen called the meeting to order, her voice strained but steady. "We're here to address the recent disruptions," she began, her words clipped. "Certain individuals have tried to undermine our community standards, but we will not falter." She didn't mention the dissolution request, but I knew she'd seen it. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp and accusing. I let her talk, let her build her case about protecting Willow Creek and upholding the covenants. The crowd was restless, some nodding along, others muttering in dissent. Then Javier stood, cutting her off. "You call this protection? You're fining us for living our lives." The room erupted, cheers mixing with shouts. Karen banged her gavel, but it was useless. The tide had turned. I stood, holding up the folder. "Karen, you received our request this morning," I said, my voice carrying. The HOA can be dissolved by the majority landowner. It's in the covenants you love so much. The room went silent, then exploded again. Who's the landowner? Someone shouted. Karen's face was a mask of fury. This is nonsense, she snapped. You have no proof. I opened the folder, pulling out the dissolution request, signed and notarized. It's legal, I said, and it's happening. I still didn't reveal my ownership. I didn't need to. The clause was enough, and Karen knew it. Her board whispered among themselves, their faces pale. She tried to regain control, announcing a vote to delay the dissolution, but the crowd wasn't having it. Mrs. Delaney stood, her voice clear. We're done with your rules, Karen. Let's vote to end it now. The vote was chaos. Karen's loyalists tried to stall, but the tenants, my tenants, were a force. Hands shot up, voices shouting, aye, before Karen could even call for nays. The dissolution passed, 38-12. Karen's gavel hit the table, a hollow thud. She stood, trembling, and pointed at me. This isn't over, Marcus, she hissed. I smiled. It is for you. The crowd cheered as she stormed out, her board trailing behind her. I stayed, answering questions, calming fears. The HOA was done, but I knew Karen wouldn't go quietly. She'd fight, and I had to be ready. The next morning, I woke to an email from Karen's lawyer, a desperate attempt to challenge the dissolution. It claimed the clause was outdated and unenforceable. Sarah laughed when I showed her. They've got nothing, she said. But we need to make this airtight. That's when I decided it was time. Time to reveal the truth. I called a neighborhood meeting, not an HOA one, just neighbors at my house. I invited everyone, even Karen's loyalists. About 50 people showed up, crowding my backyard. I stood on the deck, Lena and Ethan beside me, and took a deep breath. I've got something to tell you, I said. I'm a majority landowner. I own every house in Willow Creek. The crowd went silent, jaws dropping. Mrs. Delaney gasped. Javier laughed, shaking his head. Every house, someone asked. I nodded. I bought them 5 years ago when the developer went under. I've been your landlord, but I didn't want you to see me that way. I wanted to be your neighbor. The questions came fast. Why didn't I say anything? What did it mean? What now? I explained. I'd kept it quiet to avoid attention, to live normally. But Karen's overreach forced my hand. The HOA's gone, I said, and I'm not here to control you. I'm here to make this place ours. The reaction was electric. Some cheered, others cried. Mrs. Delaney hugged me, tears in her eyes. Javier clapped me on the back. Even some of Karen's loyalists looked relieved, their loyalty more fear than faith. But not everyone was happy. I saw Karen's SUV parked across the street, her watching from the driver's seat. She didn't come to the meeting, but I knew she'd heard. Her empire was gone, and I'd taken it without firing a shot. That night, Lena poured me a glass of wine. You did it, she said. Ethan grinned. You owned her, Dad. I laughed, but I wasn't celebrating yet. Karen was down, but not out. The next day, I got a call from Sarah. Karen had filed a lawsuit, not just against me, but against the entire neighborhood, claiming breach of contract and financial damages. It was a last-ditch effort, and it was weak. Sarah was ready to crush it, but I wanted more than a legal win. I wanted Karen to see the community she'd tried to control standing together. I organized another meeting, this time with a lawyer to explain the lawsuit and our defense. The tenants showed up in force, their anger now a unified front. We weren't just fighting Karen, we were building something new. Karen's lawsuit was a desperate swing, and it landed like a feather. Sarah dismantled it in court, presenting the dissolution clause, my ownership records, and testimonies from tenants about Karen's overreach. The judge didn't take long to rule in our favor, dismissing the case with a warning to Karen about frivolous litigation. I sat in the courtroom, watching her face crumple as the gavel fell. Her board abandoned her, their resignations already filed. The HOA was officially dead, and Karen's reign was over. But I didn't feel triumph, just relief. The fight had taken months, and I was tired. But Willow Creek was free. I expected Karen to disappear, to slink away in defeat. She didn't. The next day, I saw her SUV in her driveway, her roses still perfect, her house a defiant monument to her old power. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't attend the neighborhood meetings we started to replace the HOA. But she stayed, a ghost of her former self. I let her be. She'd lost everything that mattered. Her control, her influence, her pedestal. Chasing her out would have been petty, and I wasn't caring. I wanted to build, not destroy. The neighborhood changed fast. Without the HOA's iron grip, Willow Creek came alive. Mrs. Delaney's grandson rode his bike everywhere, leaving it in the yard without fear. Javier parked his work van proudly, a sign of his hustle. The Wilsons' basketball hoop stayed up, kids laughing and shooting hoops late into the evening. I lowered rents for my tenants, just enough to ease their burdens without revealing my hand too early. I didn't want them to see me as a savior, just a neighbor who cared. We started a community council, not to enforce rules, but to plan barbecues, fix potholes, help each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. One evening, about a month after the lawsuit, I saw Karen in her yard, pruning her roses. She looked older, her movements slow, her face drawn. I crossed the street, not sure why. "Karen," I said, stopping at her fence. She froze, her shears mid-cut. "What do you want, Marcus?" Her voice was flat, but her eyes were wary. "Nothing," I said, "just checking in." She stared at me, then went back to her roses. "You ruined everything," she muttered. I shook my head. "You did that yourself." I walked away, leaving her to her garden. She didn't need my pity, but I didn't need her anger either. The twist that lingered wasn't Karen's fault. It was the folder Mrs. Delaney had given me. I hadn't told anyone, but it contained more than the dissolution clause. There were emails from the developer, hinting at Karen's role in pushing for stricter covenants to protect her investment. She'd been in on the HOA's creation, shaping it to control, not to serve. It wasn't illegal, but it was damning. I kept it quiet, not out of mercy, but because it didn't matter anymore. Willow Creek had moved on. Karen was a relic, her power a memory. I focused on the future. Lena and I hosted a block party, the first real one Willow Creek had ever seen. Tables lined the street, music played, kids ran wild. Javier brought his famous tacos, Mrs. Delaney her homemade lemonade. Ethan even got off his phone to help set up. Neighbors who'd barely spoken before laughed together, shared stories, planned for tomorrow. I stood back, watching, my chest tight with something I hadn't felt in years: pride. Not in my ownership, but in what we'd built. A community, not a battlefield. Sarah called me the next week with an idea. "You could sell some of the houses," she said. "Let the tenants buy them. Make Willow Creek theirs." I've been thinking the same thing. I didn't need to own every house forever. It was a safety net, not a legacy. I started quietly offering deals to tenants, starting with Mrs. Delaney and Javier. They cried when I told them the prices below market, with terms they could afford. "Why are you doing this?" Mrs. Delaney asked. I smiled. "Because it's home." By the end of the month, 10 families had signed contracts, their names on the deeds. Willow Creek was becoming theirs piece by piece. Karen never came to the block party, never joined the council. Her SUV stayed in her driveway, her roses pristine. But one day, I saw a for sale sign in her yard. No one was surprised. She moved out a month later, her house bought by a young couple with a toddler and a dog. They painted the shutters blue, a color Karen would have fined them for. I waved as they moved in, their laughter filling the street. Willow Creek was healing, growing, becoming something better. And I was just Marcus, the guy who grilled burgers and fixed cars. That was enough. The seasons changed, and Willow Creek bloomed in ways I hadn't imagined. Spring brought kids on bikes, summer brought barbecues, and fall turned the street into a canvas of red and gold leaves. The community council grew stronger, organizing cleanups, movie nights, even a scholarship fund for local kids. I stayed in the background, offering advice but letting others lead. Mrs. Delaney became the council's heart, her quiet wisdom guiding us. Javier took charge of maintenance, his work van a fixture now, no fines in sight. Ethan, inspired by the changes, started a coding club for the neighborhood kids, teaching them on old laptops in our garage. Lena watched it all with a smile, her hand in mine. "You started this," she'd say. I'd shake my head. "We did, but not everything was perfect." Karen's absence left a void, not of power, but of questions. Some neighbors still wondered why I'd kept my ownership secret for so long. A few, loyal to Karen's vision, whispered about standards and property values. I ignored them. The truth was in the laughter, the open yards, the community we'd built. Still, I knew trust took time. I kept selling houses, one by one, to tenants who wanted to stay. Each sale felt like letting go of a piece of my armor, but it also felt right. Willow Creek wasn't mine to hoard. It was ours to share. One afternoon, I got a call from Sarah. She'd found something in the developer's old files, buried in public records. Karen hadn't just helped create the HOA. She'd been paid by the developer to push for stricter rules, to make Willow Creek exclusive and drive up initial sales. It wasn't illegal, but it was shady. "We could leak it," Sarah said. "Let everyone know who she really was." I thought about it, picturing Karen's name dragged through the mud. It was tempting, but I shook my head. "Let go," I said. "She's gone. We're moving forward." Sarah sighed, but agreed. The past didn't need to haunt us. The real test came that winter, when a storm hit Willow Creek. Trees fell, power lines went down, and the street was a mess. In the old days, Karen would have sent fines for unclear debris. Instead, the council rallied. Javier organized cleanup crews. Mrs. Delaney coordinated food for workers, and I chipped in with my truck to haul branches. Neighbors who'd never spoken worked side by side, their breath fogging in the cold. By the end of the week, the street was clear, and we celebrated with hot cocoa in the community center. It wasn't just a cleanup, it was a promise. We were in this together. I saw Karen one last time, months later, at a gas station outside town. She was alone, her SUV dusty, her face tired. I nodded, not expecting a response. To my surprise, she spoke. "You won, Marcus," she said, her voice low. I shook my head. It wasn't about winning. It was about living. She looked away, her jaw tight, and got in her car. I watched her drive off, feeling no anger, no triumph, just closure. She'd built a cage, and we'd torn it down. That was enough. Back home, Lena and I sat on the porch, watching Ethan play basketball with the neighbor kids. The hoop was still up, no fines, no complaints. "You think she'll come back?" Lena asked. I shrugged. "Doesn't matter. This is our place now." She squeezed my hand, her warmth grounding me. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was alive. And it was home. Years later, Willow Creek is unrecognizable, not in its houses or streets, but in its spirit. The council thrives, a messy but honest group of neighbors who argue, laugh, and get things done. We've got a community garden now, thanks to Mrs. Delaney, and a summer festival that draws people from across town. I've sold most of the houses, keeping just ours and a few rentals for families who need a break. The tenants who bought their homes send me Christmas cards, their kids' drawings taped to my fridge. Ethan's coding club grew into a nonprofit, teaching kids across the city. Lena started a book club, her laughter filling our house on Thursday nights. I'm still Marcus, the guy who fixes cars and grills burgers, but I'm also the guy who helped free a neighborhood. Karen's house has new owners now, a family who paints their shutters whatever color they want. Her roses are gone, replaced by a swing set and a vegetable patch. No one talks about her anymore, but her shadow lingers in the stories we tell. The tyrant who tried to control us, and the day we took her home back. It's not about me, though. It's about Mrs. Delaney standing up, Javier shouting back, the neighbors who voted to end the HOA. It's about the community we built from the ashes of her rules. Sometimes I walk the block at dusk, the same route I took when this all began. The houses are different now. Messier, brighter, alive. Bikes in yards, murals on fences, laughter spilling from open windows. I think about the letter that started it all, the $500 fine for too many cars. It's framed in my garage now, a reminder of how close we came to losing this. I didn't fight for power or revenge. I fought for the right to live, to park my cars, to let my neighbors breathe. And we won. The lesson isn't in the victory, though. It's in the fight. It's in standing up, speaking out, building something better. Willow Creek isn't just a place, it's a promise. A promise that we can make our own rules, lift each other up, create a home worth fighting for. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who saw a chance and took it. And if I can do that, anyone can.